Hey, I'm Nick, and I'm going to do a quick follow-up today to one of my previous videos where I talk about the stock feeder for the hammer combination machine that I've got. I mounted a Felder S308 stock feeder onto the machine, and I was at the time kind of struggling with how to do that and with some questions I had about the Felder swing away mount. And it's probably about a year later, and I've answered some of those questions and kind of come up with a solution that works for me. So I'm just gonna do a quick video to show that, and hopefully that helps people who also had similar questions. Okay, so I'm getting ready to set up the machine for a climb cutting operation. I'm gonna put a radius using the router collet, the 1/2 inch router collet that goes in the shaper on this really nice pine, but it's very splintery, so that's why I'm going to be climb cutting it. And so here I am again. I'm going to be setting up the stock feeder, and I've learned some things since I made the first video. So first thing is just to kind of orient you. So this rail here, which I think was a optional rail that I purchased from Felder, it's a 250 millimeter or 10-inch long rail that mounts on the outfeed side of the table saw, and that allows, or the infeed side of the shaper if you're climb cutting. So that allows you to put these extension tables on, which are really handy. I really like them. Come in two different kinds. There's this shorter kind that just hangs off the rail itself, and then there's this longer one that has a adjustable leg to support it. So what I found out about the swing away mount is that to mount the hinge and the plate that is the actual swing away mechanism, it basically would sit exactly where, or very close to where, this outfeed extension table is currently. And to do that, you have to take off this rail, or if you never had one, you're not taking it off. But what they give you with the kit is they give you this hinged or pivoting mount that goes here, takes up about the same amount of space. And then they give you a really short piece of rail that goes here so that you can still have an outfeed table. So let's call it like a 5 or maybe like a 6-inch piece of rail. So I chose not to do that because I like having the flexibility to be able to put both outfeed extension tables on, or to move it from one side to the other depending on what I'm cutting. And if you do the swing away mount, which goes here, and you have a outfeed extension here, you still have to take this off every time you want to swing it away, which is fine. It only takes whatever, like a minute or two, but it's just one of those things. So, and I don't use the stock feeder a whole lot. If I used it every week or every other week, I'd probably want to not go through this hassle, but I don't use it that often. So the solution I came up with, and all praise and credit in this goes to a guy named Tim Sarver, who helped me. He kind of showed me his way of dealing with this, and it inspired me. So what I did was I made this heavy aluminum plate. It's 1-inch thick aluminum. It's got M8 screws or bolts that are, in this case, and these ones are just loosely, they're drilled through so that they can move up and down or through the holes. Those screws are going to go into the slots on the extension table. And then the stock feeder itself, of course, is just mounted. In this case, I happen to use M12 bolts, drilled and tapped into this 1-inch thick plate. And it works really well. So I'm going to stop here and show a video of me just putting it on real quick, just for visual. But this is what I've come up with, and it mounts onto this table that has the extension leg, so it's very well supported. And it's working well for me so far. Okay, so this is the stock feeder installed. I'm ready to run these pieces. It's just gonna swing into place. I do have a feather board here. The table's locked in place, the sliding table's locked in place, and I'm using this groove to put the feather board. And the feather board's not really to keep the piece from coming back, because if anything, the piece is going to go that way. It's just to make sure that the piece is snug up against the fence. So the one thing I'll say about this base that I've made is that at some point I'm going to have to trim off about the 1/4 inch or so, maybe 3/8, that it extends past the cast iron base, because it does get pretty close to the back of the fence. And so it could interfere a little bit with the fence there if the fence was pulled all the way back as far as it can go. But, you know, that's an easy fix, pretty minor. I mean, I made the piece to be the width of the table extension. And I think, you know, if I was going to do it again, I would just make it probably, you know, 1/2 inch smaller so that it just had a little bit more space on each side. It's not going to affect anything, maybe 3/4 inch smaller. It's not going to affect anything in terms of how it mounts to the stock feeder. But yeah, that's it. And that's the advantage of climb cutting. So even in this really splintery material, get a really, really beautiful quality cut, because the bit is forcing the material against itself instead of wanting to splinter it away. And, you know, this just needs a little sanding and it's going to be great, but there's no tear out and no splintering. So, but you got to have a stock feeder. You're not going to be climb cutting without one, at least not safely.